Hi.
Hi, yeah. I just literally sent you a message to say I can't find your live feed because I'm completely
Oh,
sick of doing this kind of thing. And then I did find it because it's right in front of me. How are you?
I'm grand. Yeah, over caffeinated as always, but good. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. It's really very hot. So it's like I've got this big fan on me, and I've just literally jumped in a freezing cold shower to try and not sit here and sweat. So I'm good though. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm
it's
really
very
happy.
cozy.
I'm really happy to do these things. I'm just going to get really comfy. I wore like
Yeah,
a special t-shirt. I'm trying to like be more aware of what I wear in these things or how I look in these things. So, but what I can't get right is the kind of height of the kind of film. Anyway,
what's your t-shirt saying?
my t-shirt is just the lesbians and gays. I'm on the twisty chair as well, which just keeps twisting me around. Pits and perverts. Support the miners. I mean, I just kind of really like it because I was there on that march, so
Oh,
I kind of like it. I like the t-shirt. It's not a t-shirt that I wear and go, oh, it's fashionable. It's like a
yeah,
t-shirt. I
yeah.
just genuinely remember the march, and it was, how kind of empowering it was to be part of it. So, because
That's really
I'm that.
incredible.
And how are you? I like your blue background.
Thank you. They lied to me when I bought the paint online and said it was green. I was like, green's a good color for an office, but it's very obviously blue, right?
It's really blue. It's like a very vivid kingfisher blue. It's nice though. It's definitely a kingfisher blue.
Yeah. But I'm content with it. Okay, so I know that you and I could both talk for Ireland, so let's not. Let's try to keep to the half an hour if we can.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay, I'm being quite strict today. Um, so how do you want to do it? Do you want to? I'll introduce you a bit. So obviously this is Juno Roche to everyone who doesn't know who they are. They are an amazing writer. They've written a book, Gender Explorers, with interviews of young trans and gender diverse people, including from mermaids and gendered intelligence. Uh, I think from having spoken with your publisher, you're going to read a wee bit from an
I
excerpt from it.
I am. It's a really weird thing. My lovely publicist at my publisher, who's now been working with me on 3 books, so we've kind of. I have a real trust. You have to really trust the people you work with, and I really have great faith in Lily. I don't know if she's watching, but
I
anyway.
see.
So this is the book, and this is the size of the type. Now you can tell that I'm really old because what I've had to do is print it out this big. So it looks like I'm going to do like a school play. So part of the reason for writing this book was that I first, well, I'm going to read it actually, and then it's kind of clear really. So Pansy came into being in a sunny school playground in 1972, the summer term to be precise. I don't remember the exact day or time, but I know it was during a playtime, which narrows down the time of her birth should we need to do an astrological birth chart. Pansy emerged, laughing and defiant, into a crowded playground full of laughter and noise. The playground was surrounded by grass, and on one side sat the school building. By the end of the summer term, the grass had turned straw yellow and was replaced by a brown, swirling dust. It was a warm summer. Pansy emerged whilst we were playing kiss chase in the playground, possibly after finishing a small bottle of warm milk from the wooden trolley that the milk monitors pulled round to each class before the morning break, rain or shine. Rain was better because the milk was at least slightly cool. In the summer it had often curdled, and you'd only find out after whooshing it down through a paper straw. Before the afternoon break we'd have a cup of warm orange squash and a biscuit, often a custard cream or a jammy dodger. The moment that Pansy first emerged, I was running away from the boys in my class, although I'm not sure that they were chasing me. They were chasing the other girls and trying to plant weird, bird-like pet kisses on their cheeks. We were very young, so kiss chase often ended up being trip or tag. The boys laughed at me running away from them, in their eyes pointlessly, and called out to me, You're not a girl, you're not a boy, you're just a pansy, a stupid little pansy. Over and over again they hurled what they imagined was a great insult at me, designed to make me come to my silly pansy senses. Instead, I stood rigid still as it dawned on me that I was pansy. Not a pansy, but pansy. In that one insult, everything in my unhappy and confusing little life became clear. Thank God for the boys. I turned to the boys who were now beginning to form a bullying fight circle around me, and I said, I am Pansy, and I like it when you call me by my real name. I spun around 360 degrees and kept repeating, I like it when you call me Pansy. Like a 7-inch disco track, I spun until I felt sick. I was so happy that I made myself want to throw up joyful vomit. The boys roared with laughter at me spinning around, but then as they dispersed and ran away, they shouted back, she's Pansy, 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 not a boy, not a girl, but a stupid pansy. They said other stuff, not so nice stuff, but I only heard she and Pansy, and I thought, I'm taking it, it fits. It was the first name, label, or insult to ever make me feel warm inside. A little like now when someone calls me trans or queer, and I think, perfecto, too right I am. And that's, yeah, I suppose one of the most formative memories from my kind of childhood when I was, 1972, I was just barely 8, and for a whole summer term, I convinced most of the school to call me Pansy, including my teacher, who said, I will call you Pansy during carpet time, which for anyone that knows is a primary school teacher, you'll get that. That's when you go on and you'll read a story, you sit on the carpet, but she also used it against me as and I suppose in a really innocent way. She used it against me as a kind of punishment. So if I behaved badly, then I would have to go off the carpet and not be called Pansy. And I never behaved badly. It brought out all the best in me. You know, it made me love school. I put my hand up all the time. I loved putting my hand up as Pansy. I loved feeling confident and words and stories. And so at the end of my last book, Trans Power, somehow I arrived back at that memory. I hadn't really thought about it very much over the years, but I arrived back there and realised that in this last book, Gender Explorers, and I'm really not trying to sell it, it's selling really well. But just a very, very quick thing. If people can, I'm doing a thing with Pay Forward with this, where if you buy books and you lodge them, ring up Gaze the Word or Category is Books, or no, just do those two for the time being, and you buy those books can be then sent on to young trans people or their parents or workers or teachers for free. And I'm just trying to do that. So, sorry, it's a little plug.
No,
Pay It Forward.
Yeah, you've been really successful so far with the Pay It Forward thing. I think there's like 30 or something copies waiting in Category Is in Glasgow and Gaze the Word in Clerkenwell.
I think we're over 100 copies now that are kind of
Oh,
like
really?
in,
That's nice. Amazing.
and I just want to be really clear. It's just that, you know, it's like as a writer, you're always poor as a writer. Don't write books if you ever want to make money, unless you're really good at writing thrillers. You know, in that case, you might make some money, but, you know, you're never going to make. But it was always my intention with this book that the people that needed to read the words from young trans folk who were getting on with their lives, and there were some, you know, there are brilliant stories in here of young trans folk just being, you know, one of the kind of like the first interviews I think I did at GI. Let me just see if I can find it very quickly. Yeah. I'm just going to read a tiny bit of it. Yeah, so she's 11 years old. She came out of school at 9, I think it was. And when I said to her, I said, have you always been this confident? And she said, yes. And I said, well, if you could talk to somebody that wasn't as confident as you, what would you say? And she said, I would say to them, just sing it out. When I sing, I feel happy, proud, and excited about my life. I can't describe it really, but it's a really strong feeling inside. And then she goes on to talk about the things that have helped. And she says that having a supportive school really helped her. And then I said, if you could talk to other teachers, head teachers, bear in mind, this is an 11-year-old who's gone through something which actually by any stretch of the imagination, you might view it as being traumatic. Certainly that's how the world packages up. I said, if you could talk to other teachers, head teachers and assistant head teachers in other schools, perhaps where trans pupils are having a tough time, what would you say? And she said, 11-year-old, having gone through this stuff, she said, I would say, hi, I'm trans, and I don't think you're being helpful at all. You need to get your A game on. And, you know, there are people in here, there are young people in here just being utterly, you know, that's why I called it gender explorers and not trans, because I'm not sure that they are trans. I think what they're doing is they're grabbing gender by the scruff of the neck and they're making it do what they need it to do so that they can go into school the next day and be as happy in the playground as all the other kids. Or they can go into their numeracy lesson and learn. Or they can go to, you know, people, they talked about their proms and going to university. I interviewed somebody that said that the biggest deal for them was being able to go to university as themselves. You know, people need to read this. People need to read. They're not asking for much in life. They're not talking about, on the whole, 99% of them aren't talking about surgery or this or that. They're saying, just let me be myself tomorrow, please. And if you can just respect me being myself, if you cannot question me or doubt me or say that I don't know my own mind. I think, again, she just to end with, she says this, so I said to her, what would you say when teachers don't believe pupils? I said, what would you say to the teachers that don't believe pupils? And she said, I would say, you're wrong. You're definitely wrong. Everyone knows their own minds. Even if they don't know anything else, they know their own mind. Even 5-year-olds, they know what they're thinking inside, and you don't, especially you without your A game on. I mean, it's like you know, it's like these kids are asking you for the space that actually they own. They own this space. When a kid goes to school, they own a space in school. It's not a space, it's not given to them out of charity. It's not given to them out of the kindness of a teacher's heart. A teacher is employed to bring out the best in every pupil, and that's what a head teacher's there to do. And, you know, I just think they need to read this. And that's not, you know, it's like I'm not interested. I say time and time again, I have this house in Spain and I have olive trees. And sitting under an olive tree is the thing that makes me happiest in the world. And writing and sitting under an olive tree makes me incredibly happy. So this is about really trying to redefine a space for trans people in which we're not going, like us. We're going, no, we're all right, actually. What you need to do is just give us our legal space and the space that we've earned and the space that we own and that we have every right to. And you need to stop telling us what we are within that space. Just listen to us. And if you feel like you can't get on board with it, that's fine. But be quiet.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we didn't fight for this space out of some like angry demand. It's like we're here and we deserve to be listened to. And these trans young people or these gender explorers, you know, they have this space in school and they deserve to have it, and they deserve to be respected. It's not like a matter of someone going above and beyond, and you know they need to read this book to further educate themselves. It's like, no, it's your basic duty to actually
yeah. I mean, this book shouldn't have needed writing. I shouldn't have needed to go. I mean, it took me a year to write, and I went around the country and, you know, because interviewing adults is entirely different to interviewing young people. You have to, with young people, it's entirely on their terms. It's entirely everything is on their terms. I would even say to them, when they came in, they would come into the room, especially the interviews at Mermaids, they'd come into a room with their parent or guardian, and I'd say, is the room okay? Do you want me to change the room around? Do you need to have control of the room? You need to have ownership. Where do you want to sit? How do you want to sit? What drinks do you want? You know, it's like you know, do you want anything to eat? Do you want your parent or guardian to be in the interview? You know, it's like you know, it took a long time, and it shouldn't. You know, in a way, I shouldn't have needed to write it. But I mean, I felt like there's an awful lot of young trans kids and gender explorers and gender non-conforming teens and gender fluid teens and a whole myriad of things. One that's completely inspired me to kind of reach deeper into my own gender, but they're changing the world. They really are, and that's not, you know, BS. I'm going to try and not. I'm really doing my best with this book not to swear at all. So I'm being, which anyone that knows me knows is a really difficult thing, but I'm getting there. But you know, but you know, they really are changing the world, and they're doing it beautifully, and they're not asking for anything back. All they're asking for is to go to school tomorrow as themselves and feel comfortable and be afforded exactly the same protections that everyone else is afforded. Every school should have a bullying policy. Every school should have an equality policy and diversity. You know, they have all this stuff. One of the things that I found when I was doing a lot more work in schools, it was actually what it highlighted were how many schools were actually ill prepared to do any of this stuff. And you know, they definitely don't have their A game on or their B game on, and they need to get it on, because trans people, we are not going away. And this generation of people, this generation of kind of gender explorers, you know, they're not going to go away. They're just going to inhabit more and more of it and change more and more of it, brilliantly so.
Yeah, I think that they really are, you know, pioneers, like pushing for further acceptance and, well, demanding it really. And it's not just about it's not about tolerance anymore. It's about acceptance. Like, we don't want to just be tolerated. We are here. Transgender people exist. They need to be part of, you know, educational systems. They need to be part of wider society, and they need to be seen and heard, listened to, and respected. We just have a question from someone just asking, where did, you talked about it very briefly, but where did the phrase gender explorers come from?
So I think that when I first of all started the book, I kind of had this idea in my mind that the word trans as applied to me, for example, I transitioned when I was growing up. I went through a very traditional unhappy childhood, unhappy teenage years, unhappy university years, unhappy, and then a kind of hey presto moment, and then sat in a queue to wait for somebody to tell me that I was mad or bad or sad or all of those things. And so I went through a whole process of transitioning that was very owned by society and was very kind of set and legislated by society. You will do this, you will turn up to this many appointments, you will wear these. And it seemed to me that what a lot of the young people I was interviewing were doing was they were just literally going to nursery as themselves. They had brilliant parents often who were supportive of that and were saying, you know, they're just being themselves. They're really happy to do that. This is their happy place. And it felt like if I apply that word trans to them, it feels like what I'm applying is a whole political, socio-economic structure that actually they might have to come across that when they're slightly older. But actually right now, what they are doing is exploring the world for themselves on their own term. And part of that exploration is that they're exploring gender. And for me, it just felt like you know, titles are really important to me. And it was like, if you'd put on the cover trans and young people, then you'd have a whole bunch of people saying, oh, this is about surgery, this is about hormone blockers, this is about this is about pressure. You know, and it wasn't. What I wanted to capture was a group of young people who were exploring the world on their own terms. And that felt to me like the so I just couldn't have had that title. I couldn't have had that. Well, I think the words, I mean, I think it's small. There are stories of growing up trans and changing the world, but to me it was really like what they are as explorers, pushing at the boundaries of stuff, and they're doing it. You know, we've got Trump. I just read a really interesting long read in the New York Times this morning, which was talking about how Trump defines the end of America. And in a way, part of what's going to end Trumpness and that kind of toxic genderism, in a way, is these young trans kids. Because at the top, at this end up here, you've got this kind of, these ridiculous, toxic, white, you know, power, and at the bottom you've got these young trans kids coming up, beginning to take stuff apart, structures apart. And not only are they taking stuff apart, every time a school has to engage with an issue around gender, it has to do some thinking around its own facilities, its own curriculum, its own toilets, its own language. We're changing stuff. We're not getting any credit for it at all at the moment, but in 100 years' time, we will get credit for it, or these young
Yeah.
people will get credit for it. And I really hope that some of them are alive long enough to realise the kind of what they've done and what an epic thing it is that they've done. So
Yeah. It's about, I suppose, decolonizing like the curriculum
yeah,
in a much more radical way. Um, yeah, it's just it's wonderful what these young people are doing. Just through existing, they're not even not
yeah,
intentionally going out of the way to like
yeah.
shake off the system.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think to a certain extent that's a lot of other. I mean, I always find it really weird when people call me an activist because, like, I
Mm.
don't think I've ever activismed or whatever the thing is, the doing word of being an activist. I think what I'm doing is I'm a writer, and in writing the books that I want to write, it creates new space, and it's exactly the same as these young people. What they're doing is they're getting up, getting dressed, and going to school. I
Hmm.
mean, nothing could be more basic, nothing could be more straightforward. But in doing that simple act, they change the parameters of so much. And
Hmm.
what we really should be doing is saying, these people are these kids are heroic. That's what we should be saying. We shouldn't be having any other conversations at all, or any other debates at all. This isn't a debate. What we should be saying is, they're heroic. They're really doing a lot of the work that needs doing. They're doing it for us,
Yeah.
and we should be really isn't it honourable that we live in a time where we've got a kind of I interviewed an 8-year-old in the book who said to me, who I interviewed with their mum was part of the interview, and they said their mum was saying, oh, this is how it happened, and the 8-year-old said, no, you've got it completely wrong, mum. What happened was that I sent you an email on the Friday night, and I sent the head teacher an email on the Friday night to say that on Monday morning everything was going to change because it had to change. I've waited long enough. It's like an 8-year-old. And one of the things that nearly every young person that I interviewed did was that they would send a letter to their parents or carer or guardian, whoever it was that has the kind of legal guardianship of them. They would send them a letter which would say, I'm really sorry, I've got to say this thing, full of kind of self-doubt. And they'd always include like some helpful like addresses. They'd include places that the parents could go for support. And it just struck me that it was just like we just need to honour them. That's why, in a way, I'm desperate to do the kind of pay it forward thing because I want them all to have a book. Because
Hmm.
it's like, can you imagine going through trauma, having the world telling you that you're wrong, you still wanting just to do this thing? You take the time out to write a letter, be you 8 years old or 16 years old. You write a letter, but in that letter, you not only explain who you are, but you also kind of include help and advice to your parents or the other head teacher. I mean, it's mind boggling that
Yeah.
we're not kind of going, these really are the future. As far as I'm concerned, trans and gender non-conforming, non-binary, trans in its broadest term, I'm going to say.
Hmm.
My word is trans in its broadest term, not trans as in affixed to anything else, but
Hmm.
they really are the future, and they are the people that are making a difference. And I don't want to sound I'm not about to release a pop song. I'm about to, but I do believe that that is. I think that's the exact words of the pop song. Anyway, I'm going to stop now.
No, I get exactly what you're saying. It's like when we at Gender Intelligence say trans, we always mean like including gender diverse and non-binary and gender queer. Every facet of trans is
Yeah,
included. So I definitely think that trans people are, breaking down gender norms, breaking down gender roles, fighting the patriarchy and helping end it just through existing, through
yeah,
speaking loudly about their experiences. And I was like, yeah, you're welcome.
yeah, yeah.
What's that with transgender people's thanks?
And even in terms of feminist, I mean, even in terms of kind of feminist, it was really weird. I interviewed her. I think she was probably about 14, but she had transitioned at school quite a bit before that. And she said, the thing is that she said, I know that I'm a girly girl, and I know that adults out there will say, so you're just doing that because it's a socialized thing. So you think you're a girl because you like pink stuff. And she said, this really smart thing. She said, the thing is that I can only pick the stuff that's around me. I
Yeah.
can only express myself. She said, like my sisters or my friends or anything, I don't have a different set of stuff. I can't rewrite all those rules until we rewrite all those rules. And so, in a sense, until shops stop selling pink things for girls and blue things for boys, then we're all going to grow up in a system in which we veer to one side or the other. And it was just brilliant. I just thought, she's just even in that sense, she has a nuanced view of her femininity at 14, which says, look, I get it. I get what you're going to say, but actually this is all that was on offer to me, was pink. And it might be that I grow out of this, you know, in exactly the same way. I remember interviewing somebody at GI and them saying, you know, it's like I definitely, all the stuff to do with she doesn't work for me at all. It really doesn't work for me. But what does work for me is makeup really works for me. And I really don't want to let go of that. And I don't want anybody telling me or putting me in the box and saying, this is what you can and can't do. And because this is what society does. And I want to take my bits, you know, in exactly the same way. That's how I feel. I mean, I use they, them all the time now. But, you know, I'm aware that people say to me, like, I look a certain way and therefore I shouldn't be that. You know, it's like there's this kind of notion of, like, we've got to kind of break that stuff down. That's why for me the word trans is the most liberating word, because it has the biggest amount of space going. I mean, it just is, there's no limits to trans, because it was one thing that we were told we should all avoid ever being seen as. Just pass. Make sure that you pass. Don't be trans. Make sure that you pass. Don't let anyone know. Don't, you know, get rid of every hair. Do this, do that. You know, and in some ways, it's like a hiding to nowhere, because trans is the one place that gives us the power. It gives us the kind of security and confidence and the kind of the, you know, unfortunately, we still live in a world in which trans, especially trans women of color, black trans women in North and South America, are being killed disproportionately. We've got to do something. I mean, we as white trans people have got to do stuff about that. We have to do more than just kind of one day a year reading out and badly reading out a list of names. We have to do much more than that. Lighting a candle for it. We know we have to finance. Some of the brilliant things that have come out of this last month are people financing, you know, black women trans projects in America, or and also here in this country we should be doing that in terms of stuff. So I mean, I just don't think that we're given anywhere enough credit for the work that we're doing. And actually, young people, what I found with young people was that everything we had done as a kind of older people, and for me, kind of probably much older. I'm pretty sure I'm a bit older than you. I'm a lot older than you. I'm just saying that. I'm completely fine with that. I'm really happily in my 50s. But I think that the stuff we've done has trickled down, and we've created a series of kind of barriers so that they are protected from a lot of this stuff. They really are protected from a lot of this stuff. I know that we do all the stuff on Twitter. They don't. On Twitter, they're kind of like, I interviewed, I think it was a Mermaids interview. I interviewed this young girl. I think she was about 6 or 7, and she had no interest to talk about trans or anything at all. She wasn't interested. She just wanted to talk about what she wanted to become after she left school. And she said, "Oh, I love YouTube videos." And I said, "Well, what do you know? What do you what?" And she said, "I'm only interested in YouTube videos about people that eat out of date food." And I thought, it was so random that you kind of like, and that's the thing about when you interview young people, you kind of have to go with it and go, well, actually, what she's expressing is that she's got ambitions and aspirations, and they're kind of weird, and I don't get them. I'm really old. I can barely use like Instagram Live, so it's kind of like, but you know, part of it is that we have created enough barriers. We as older trans folks should be really proud of what we've done, because we have created barriers that are protecting these young people. Can you imagine going back, you know, when I was in 1972, when I was 8 years old, after coming out as pansy, what I kind of talk about a tiny bit in the book, I don't touch on it much, is that, you know, I had years of educational psychotherapy because they thought I was mad. Because what was I talking about? My teacher said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow older?" And I said, "Pregnant, like my mum." You know, and you know, back then that was just like, well, there's something wrong with you. You know, we live in a world now in which we've created a world now in which an 8-year-old can go to school and be themselves, and they can be themselves to the point where I can interview them and they can be this most kind of erudite, smart, eloquent interviewee that going. You know, it's just so I mean, I think things are moving in the right way. I know that we've had some things that have been a bit destabilizing. Baroness N, the wizardry person. I think we've had, but you know, those are just distractions along the way, when really the most important things are is that school buildings are changing, the curriculum is changing. Most feminists I see online or on our side are saying, hold on a minute, this is just making everything better for all of us. There's a tiny group of people that are against us, and we need to bear that in mind and think about the good stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is really, really important to always remember that you know, these young people are allowed now to speak freely about their, you know, pansy-esque experiences, without being cast aside as crazy.
Yeah,
And there's a limited platform being given to people now, to young people, but it still needs to get built up, and it needs to be bigger, so that anyone who is, you know, a gender explorer is able to freely and openly talk about that and have that respected. But as you say, I think, you know, the obstacles in the way are just little blips. The world is changing for the better, and there's
yeah, yeah,
nothing we can do about that, even if we
yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's happening. It's kind of like, I think it's when I interviewed Kate Bornstein for Trans Pan, my second book. They said this really brilliant thing about, you know, it's like the pebble was dropped a long time ago.
Hmm.
So the ripples started a long time ago.
Yeah.
You may not have noticed them, you may not have felt them, but they've been rippling for a long time. You will not stop them. The power is with us now, and I don't mean that in any kind of we're going to be powerful. And although actually, if we could defeat Trump tomorrow with power, I'd like that. But I think the power will happen because buildings change, because curriculums change, because that stuff changes. And you know, the kickback, you know, equality is never a kind of a straightforward up. You know, it's a kind of hilly, rocky kind of terrain. But I mean, the thing is that we've got greater freedoms now to create structures that, you know, they can't take away. I mean, I think there's I can't remember who said it, but that someone said, you know, there's a you can knock down buildings, but people will still find evidence through archaeology of what the truth was. So, like, we found out about, you know, everyone had myths for years and years that the pyramids were built by people who were enslaved by the pharaohs, and actually the truth of it, some of it I'm sure was true, but a lot of the truth of it was that it was difficult to farm at certain points in the Egyptian delta. So at certain points, all the farmers were employed to build the things, and they could see that by the villages, by the archaeology around the villages. So, in some senses, even if they try and stop us, in 100 years' time, people will go, "Oh, there were these things called non-binary toilets or gender non-specific toilets." I mean, you can't get away from that stuff. You just can't. People go, "All the urinals seem to have disappeared." Well, of course they did, because no one really likes using them. No one really likes using urinals. There's great evidence around that. So
Yeah,
what
I
young
don't know. I got in trouble once for saying that by a trans man who shouted at me, and I was like, "Okay, maybe you like using urinals, but no one else does."
Okay, so let me just qualify that. No young person at school,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
proven thing, they're a site for bullying. They're a site for intimidation. You know, young boys that go to school do not want to go in and share a big urinal. They want to have the kind of privacy and the decency and the respect of a cubicle. So we're doing that. We're changing that. We should definitely be celebrating these young people, and you know, and as many people as possible. And I'm not, again, it sounds like I'm really plugging, and I can never work out if that's backwards. I think it is backwards on here, but it
It is
says gender.
backwards.
But honestly, the young people's voices in it are amazing, as a starting point for teachers, any kind of youth work or social workers as well, who often get it really wrong. I've had horror stories about social workers being kind of brought into a situation in school and really having no clue at all. Just read them and just kind of relax down and understand that if we just support them to go into school and be themselves, they will be the best that they can be. You know, they won't do. I think I probably wasted 30 years of my life, and I'll never get that back again. And I'm not bitter, I'm not whatever about that, but I don't want that for anyone else.
Mm-mm.
If I'd been a mother, if Pansy had gone on to be a mother, I wouldn't have wanted my children to have wasted 30 years of their life. That would be horrifying to me. I don't want a child to waste a year of their life, because having been a teacher for 10 plus years, I know how important every week of education is, let alone wasting a year or 2 years or 3 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, so dead important to me. I can never read these comments, by the way, because it's too small for me to read. So I don't know if anyone's asking the question. So if anyone said anything to me directly, I'm really not being rude. It's just I can't read without my glasses on.
Let me see. I'll look through. Education is key. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Someone said it's a really uplifting conversation, that they're empowered by these young people. And then the last comment is, I understand the urinal comment as someone who doesn't want to stand for the toilet, but is trans mask. Okay, so,
Yeah,
yeah. What was I going to say, Juno? Yeah, I think, whilst you don't want to unnecessarily big up the thing and look like you're trying to sell the book, because I know, we all know it's not about you making money from this, but it is an important read. And
God.
we don't want this book to have to exist, but it does.
Yeah,
It's just like,
yeah,
us at Gender Intelligence, we don't want to exist,
yeah,
we don't want the need to exist, but until
yeah,
there is no need,
yeah.
we will.
And I have to say that this book is the first book of it. It's like I'm genuinely so proud of this book, because it's the first book of its kind where when I set out to do the book, I thought I'm not going to say anything at all. I'm not going to make any judgments. This book isn't about me. I will tell the story about me, what happened in 1972, because I think it shaped me in lots of ways. But this is just a book in which these young people speak their truth.
Yeah.
And they did brilliantly. So I've said to people, if anyone leaves any reviews, don't send to me in the reviews. Send to the young people in the reviews. Honestly, don't send to me. Send to the young people. Pick a story that you really like, or pick an interview that's really touched you, and center a line from that interview. We need to let them know, because they took a real chance talking to me. They took a real chance to put their words into a book. They are trusting us. They're trusting us to look after them, to be good custodians of their stories. And in some kind of senses, we need to really honour that by placing them at the centre and really just kind of raising those up. It would be, this is the only book I think that's out there that says, no, this is them talking and telling us what they need and what they do and how they live their lives. Be that if they wrote a letter to the head teacher, or if they're telling me that they want to make YouTube videos with out of date food. Honestly, there's so many nuggets of brilliance in here. So
Yes. Okay, I see that we've run over a wee bit. Are there just any key takeaways for you, Gino, just from like what you've seen so far? There's been amazing reviews about the book, centering the young people, definitely. Are there any key takeaways from what you've seen around there?
yeah, I've seen that people are being really like that, no BS from my point. If you read this book, you'll go, oh my God, it's really simple.
Mm.
Oh, it's not scary. If you're a parent of a young gender questioning child, and you're terrified, actually this book should help you just to kind of ease down a bit and go, oh, okay, it's that's what they want to do. Well, let's just see how it goes. And that doesn't mean it's going to be plain sailing, because we live in a tough time. We're living in tough times. So again, I'm not saying that it's going to be plain sailing, but the takeaway from me has been the number of people that have gone, God, yeah, they're brilliant, aren't they? How brilliant that we get to hear from them now. That's the thing that I think for me is the takeaway, is that actually I just kind of felt like if I just put them in a book, a beautiful book, and if I wrote that book with all the, I was a teacher for 10 years plus, so I kind of get how to make sure that children, if you're working with children, they have to be really safe. Their safety, their kind of them feeling confident, that's the most important thing. So I felt like I was the person that could write this book, or could write a book that contained their writing. So my takeaway is that these people are amazing, and if you read it, you will go, you know what, we just need to give them space.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah, that's my
every
takeaway.
time I speak to you, it's just you're so Inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love talking to you, and I love the fact that you're in Glasgow. So Glasgow is like one of my favourite places in the world, and I always say to people that if I ever left here, which is in this kind of Andalusian mountains, if I ever left here, I couldn't move to England again. Politically, I couldn't move to England, but I could, and I couldn't go to. I don't think I could go to Edinburgh because it's quite posh, and I'm not really posh. But I could go to Glasgow because it's just got everything going for it. Really, as a city, I love Glasgow. So it's
Well,
lovely to
here's the
chat to
sofa bed.
you, Glasgow.
Anytime. This is sofa bed for you. I just wanted to say, because there's a few comments asking where you can buy the book. So Juno's publisher have offered a 25% discount on the book if you buy it directly from their site at jkp.com. If you use the code Explorers in all caps. And as Juno mentioned at quite near the start of this, you can get a buy it forward copy at, where was it? Gaze the Word.
Yeah, so
In
Word or Category is Books are both doing it. You can find them both on Twitter. They're easy to find, or you can message me on Twitter, and it's just a way that you ring up to Gaze the Word or Category is Books. You buy some books. You buy a book or two books, or some people have been. I mean, as we've been talking, somebody brilliantly came up and said that they just pledged to buy 10 books. You know, and that means 10 families, 10 teachers, which means 10 schools, 10 young people who feel like they're the only person in the world can read a book that's full of people like them, and they can go, God, there's someone in there who's 5 and I'm 8. And I was like, you know, there's like, you can only be what you can see. You can only become what you know exists. And it's so important. So the pay it forward thing for me is really important. So maybe if you're buying yourself a book, if you can, buy a second one and just leave that as a pay it forward, because it's really, you know, we raised, I think it was over 100 books, or around about 100 books. You know, most of those have gone already. So, they're not, it's not just anyone ringing up and getting them. These are going to families, because I'm getting messages from families to say, my daughter started reading your book. She's a tiny bit into it and she's completely engrossed, and I'm in tears. And it's kind of like, you know, it's like, it's not a book that's meant to make people cry, but it's like, it is that thing of going, I'm not on my own. You know, I don't know about you, but I didn't hear the only word I heard up until the age of about 30 was sex change. That was the only thing I heard. No, I didn't hear anything else that could vaguely describe how I felt inside as a gender non-conforming person. I didn't have any idea at all. It's taken me, I'm in my mid-50s, and I'm now beginning to kind of flesh out my gender. And I think to a certain extent, let's allow a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 75-year-old. But you know, the younger person will have the chance to go to school as themselves, etc., and aspire and dream, and all that stuff matters so much. I just said, me too, I'm 40. Congratulations for being 40. I remember well.
And I look forward to it.
You look fabulous, by the way. I have not seen you in person for a long time. You look fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a few years, actually. Yeah, I got rid of the phone.
I'm really following, this is like completely off the subject, but I've been really following your hair. Your hair kind of like, you had like a brilliant fringe at one point.
It was a bit too blunt, I thought. But anyway, let's not talk about my friend. Okay, Juno, thank you so much.
That's okay. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to sign off now. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining.